have enough time to properly explain how to do the homework. So I'm going to try and give a short demonstration of how to do the homework correctly for this week. So the homework, for the homework, you should go, first of all, you should go to Manaba. You should go to the assignments. You should go to assignment 3, CSS formatting. And here you will find an explanation of the homework. And you will find, most importantly, the CSS exercise. So this is the part we have to download. So I'm going to download this to my computer. I'm going to click here. And then I'm going to put it somewhere where I can find it. It's a zip file, so I'm going to save it. Then after I save it, I find it. Here it's a zip file. And you'll have to open it or get the file inside out, the file that's inside out. So this is the file that's inside here. Okay. On Windows you may have to drag it out. So if we look inside here, we can see that there's two things inside here. There's an HTML file and a CSS file. If you look at this, if we can open the CSS in the browser, and that's what it looks like. Okay, so this will be a test page for CSS, and this here is the test page. This is the koalas, the content of the page. Okay, so let's go back and see here again. This here is the style CSS, the CSS style file. This is the part that you have to change and submit. That's the homework. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to open this one in Emacs. So on your computer, whichever computer you're using, you start Emacs. When you start Emacs, this is the usual, and then you need to find your file in Emacs. Okay. Okay, so here is my koala style file, and I'm going to open this in Emacs. When you open it in Emacs, this is what you see. You see here that this is a CSS document for computing assignment A, computing A assignment 3. And here are the parts which we have to change. So because I want to work, side by side, I'm going to take this here out. Oops. I'm going to make it a little bit easier to work, one next to each other on my computer. So here is my HTML page, and here is my style file for this HTML, and you can see that because the H1 is color red, that this will be red. And so if as we already know, if I change this, for example, to blue, in Emacs, this is what I get, and if I save it and reload it, it will show up in blue. So the goal now is to make this file look nice in some way. You can do any number of things. You can change. I put here the parts that would be good to change. You have the body, H1, H2, H3. This way of writing H1, H2, H3 changes all three things at the same time. So if I write color blue here, then I get only the H1 is going to be blue. But if I put it here, and reload, then all of them will be blue. So in that way, you can make your life a little easier if you want all things to look the same in some way. You can put the things that should be different here, and the things that should be the same could go here. Here you can change your paragraph. Here you can change your UL. And here you can change your list items. There's also something for an OL. That's an ordered list, a list with the numbers 1, 2, 3. We actually don't have a list like that in this document. So if you change this, you won't see anything change in this document. So now might be some things that you might want to do. How should you find out what to do? Well, the best thing is to look in the references. Okay, here's the CSS short reference that we gave. This explains different things that you can change. So you can change the color and the background color. So we can, for example, change the background color. So this here's our selector, and here we put background color with a colon, and then we tell it what color we want. So we can pick any color. We can pick any color we like. Now, colors can be given with a number of different ways. They can be given. A color can be given with a name, like pink. If this is a known color for the computer, if the computer knows this color, then you will get a change in your color. Right? You can also use numbers to change colors. Numbers can be given in any of these ways, either with RGB, then you can need to give 3 numbers like this, or with a crosshatch, and then you can give numbers like this. These ones again have to be hexadecimal numbers, so 0 through 9 and A through F are hexadecimal numbers, so you can give 6 hexadecimal numbers like this. How to find a number that makes a nice color is something that the best way to do it is to use a color chart or color picker. I actually put one I put one like that on the Manaba page. So if you go to the resources of our class, into the help resources, the handouts, I put a web color table, and you can choose colors from here. So if you would choose some color like this, right, so here are some colors. These ones are all good names, so any of these names will work, and names are usually a little bit easier to use than the numbers. But the numbers give you more choices, because you can even choose colors that do not have a number. That you can choose colors that do not have a name. So let me just bring back my bring back Emacs here. So another thing that we can do besides changing the color is we can also change other things. We can, for example, put a space around it, right? There are basically 3 kinds of space. I'll write them here. First of all, there's margin. The margin. So let me write So a good way to use margin to say how big the margin should be would be use something like ems, em, okay? So if you do that, then you get a space like this around here, all around the edge of your page, okay? You can also put a border around your page, right? So a border typically needs to know three things. It needs to know what kind of border it should be. So for example, a solid border will give you a line. And we should say how thick it should be. We usually do this in pixels. So let me try 3 pixels. And then the third thing we might want to do about the color is to give it about the border is to give it a color. So I'll just use red again, but please use some more interesting color. So if I do that, you can see that I get a red border around my page. Now you can also see that the inside, the content inside is very close to the border, and I can change that by using the third thing, which is known as padding. So if I use padding, again, I'll use M for this. As you can see, the padding gives me a space inside my border. Okay, so this part outside here is the margin. This part in here is the padding, and this is the border. I can put borders around other things, not just around the page. I can put a border around around my H1, for example. So if I want to put a border around the H1, I could do that as well. So let's try to do a different kind of border. I'll use a dashed border, and I'll use a thicker, and I'll use a different color. And if I do that, you can see I'll get a border around my H1, right? Now you can see that when I do this, I get a color. I get the now I get the title is very close to the border. So again, I could use the padding on here. So let's say I'll use padding like this. Now you can see again it puts padding all around things, so it makes it very, very big. What if I wanted just some space on this side, but not on this side, not on the top and the bottom? So this here is the left side. So I could actually do that by writing padding left. Okay. So now you can see before I was writing padding and 1M, so that would go all around the padding all around. But if I use padding left, this is what happens. You can see now it only puts some space on the left side. It doesn't put as much space on the top and the bottom. So in that way I could put more space at the top. I could put more space on here and less space at the top. I can give, for example, padding at the top and this padding at the top. I'll just put only a little bit of padding, so let's only put like half an M, okay? And you can see now I put a little bit of space at the top. Okay. You know, for the page, we made a background. We colored the whole background. What about the heading? If we have a border, we can put a background color on the border as well. On the heading, I mean, as well. So I'll just make it white. You can see now my heading gets a white color behind the. What about other things? So another thing that we can change about our our page is the text. So we could use a font. We can change what is called the font, and there are different ways to change the font. We can change what kind of font we use, and we can change the size of the font. So now you can see already that in general H1s are big and bigger. They have a bigger font than the paragraphs and so on. So that's sort of built in, but you can still change it if you like. So so let's just try changing the font. This is to change the size of the font. We would use font size. So, and now I'm going to use. Now the typical thing to use for font sizes are so-called points. So so I'm going to use something like, let's use 24 points. It didn't change anything. Wait a second. I don't know. Maybe let's try pixels. Let's see, what does that do? Some of these things here. As you can see, 24 pixels is a very small size, so I could use a bigger size. So let's try something like 48. Now you get a much bigger font. I can go even bigger than that. Oh. So let's try something. Let's try 86. Now you get a gigantic font here. So you can try different sizes like this. Okay. These are things you have to try out a little bit until you understand how it works. So the important point is to try something out, and then go over here and reload it and make sure you can see a change. And if something doesn't change, check why doesn't it not change. Now you can of course change the fonts for the H1, H2, H3. You can also change the font for everything. Okay, so one thing we could do is we can choose the type of font. For example, right now this kind of font that I'm using here is a so-called sans serif font, right? So we could change this to a serif font, the kind that we use in books. That would be something like this. Okay. So a typical font name is, for example, Times New Roman. So that would be changing the font to this Times New Roman. Okay. So if I do that, then I get a font. As you can see, the font now is something like a printed font, like in a book. Now, one of the problems with these fonts is that sometimes a computer might not have this font. Okay, if it doesn't have this font, people will not see this. So to avoid that problem, people usually give not just one thing, but they give a number of options. So for the font family, you might write Times New Roman, but then you can write serif behind it. And if you do that with a comma like this, okay. Now we're not going to see any big change here because I have the Times New Roman font, and this is what I'm seeing. And Times New Roman, so we'll try to choose this one first. But if it doesn't know this one, then it can just go to this. And serif is more general, and every computer will have some serif font, so it will get a similar font instead. So we already looked at colors and margin boxes and margins and so on. Then finally, one more thing we might try to check is the lists. What about lists? Well, here we have a list here, right? Now, of course, we can also change the, we can just change the list. So if we change the list and give it a background color, okay, let's try, what shall we do? Yeah, here, go back to Emacs. Okay. So I'm not particularly trying to make this look nice. So now you can see that my list here is getting a color. It's getting a background color. So I can see where it is. Notice it has these little dots here. Okay. This is the standard way for it to make a list. What if I want to change that? Well, you can change that. Okay. So one thing you can do is you can change that by using what is called the list style. So the list style would usually go onto the UL. So if I change this to list style, I can change it, for example, to circle. And you can see now my little dots have been turned into circles. Okay, there would be some other things we could also use besides using using circles. There are a few other options that we can use. We can also use squares, for example. Now you can see these are little squares. Okay. But finally, another thing that we could do is we can actually use none. Oops, I can even use none. Okay, if I set the list style to none, then you can see that the bullets sort of disappear completely.